Welcome to this episode of my podcast, She Built This. Today, I wanted to probably have a little bit of a ramble, if I'm honest, around some of the subjects that come up when I'm talking to clients. And one particularly today, I forget that I'm, privileged to be in amongst information and research, and I intentionally put myself in spaces where I listen to people who I trust, who I know take research and science led information very, very seriously, a little bit too seriously sometimes, but they do. And so when you put yourself in spaces like that, very, very quickly, the information that gets spouted around, social media, the news, all of these sorts of things get very, very quickly debunked. And I kind of go, oh, okay, cool. And I wrongly assume that that gets passed down. Of course, we all remember things that have stayed with us and possibly things that still stay with us. So I thought I would talk around a few myths, maybe, that people come up against quite regularly. And one particular one that's sort of sitting around at the moment that I feel hopefully will help. And my job, I felt like with this podcast, was partly to impart information to you that I felt I had gone out and actively um, sought the answer to in a science led way. So, the thing I was talking to about a client today was the Stacey Sims and Andrew Huberman podcast, and she reminded me of that, and I'd gone full circle with it. So I listened to the podcast when it came out, and like a lot of people, I was like, wow, this is really interesting. This woman is really knowledgeable and clued up, and oh my gosh, I'd never really thought of things like she's saying. And hands up, I got taken in as well. So hands up, I absolutely bought 100% into what she was saying because it seemed to make sense. And it was only when I started to try and I wanted to kind of cite her. I wanted to use her as a reference for the things that I was starting to say based on the information that I'd heard. And whilst, I look back now and realize how slightly stupid that was. But the information that I heard, and I was like, oh, cool, I've got to pass this on to all these ladies I work with who will be fascinated to know that they shouldn't be training fasted, that they have to eat within 15 minutes of waking, that there's like all of these sorts of really nuanced things that I hadn't been applying. And once I started to dig in, I couldn't find the studies. Like, I couldn't find the information that she was referring to. Like, it was just, I was like, okay, that's strange. Because most of the time, and I looked on the podcast notes, and there were studies, or there were links to things that she had done, and studies she'd been part of, but I couldn't find what she was referring to. And then I went into I'm on a course, and they have a forum for asking questions to the tutors of the course. And it occurred to me that when I was asking this question, I was like, okay, so anybody know where information is coming from? And it was like a barrage of responses back that was basically, as well-meaning as Stacey Sims is, she kind of gets there, but she just misses the mark. So a lot of the information that she's passing on is based on animal studies. Now, we're not animals, and I find it slightly ironic that she is saying women are not small men. Well, women are definitely not animals or small rodents. We're not rats, for example. So I would argue we are probably more like men than we are like rats. So the way that they respond to something is probably going to be more dissimilar than the way that we respond compared to men. And so as soon as that was flagged up, I was like, okay. So some of the information that she's passing on, it's like there's parts of it. So she talks about creatine, that's really, really cool. Creatine is highly, highly researched. And if you don't take it, please take it. It's not only good for muscle growth, but it's also really, really good for cognitive function. So I will do a whole separate episode on it if you want to, me too. But the things around, for example, the fasting, I think it's much more nuanced, and actually it's both actually. So it's nuanced in the fact that some people, for example, I'm not great with breakfast. Like, I'm okay with it, but I have to wake up hungry. If I don't wake up hungry, I don't want to eat until a bit later on. And if I start forcing myself to eat early, I just end up eating more. And quite frankly, that's not what I need to do as a woman going into menopause, where I'm trying to manage my weight. And so some people love breakfast as soon as their eyes open, they're awake, they want breakfast. Cool, have breakfast. It's not the most important meal of the day. It doesn't matter. You can have it whenever you like. I know that for some of my clients, bringing in that having something on waking had an actually really, really positive impact on what they ate for the rest of the day. So having their hunger curbed in the morning with something really high protein meant that they didn't snack so much later on. And I argue a little bit that actually maybe if we just literally made their breakfast super, super high protein, it may have had the same effect. But it worked for them. It worked as a routine. And that is probably what it boils down to, is consistency and routine. And I'm going to come back to this point. But with regards to a lot of the things, so I think she was talking about the cortisol, not doing sort of slow state zone 2 stuff is just kind of like pointless. Well, I think that you probably need to look every decade at what you're doing anyway and see, is it working for me? Do I enjoy it? You know, how am I finding it, does it add to my life? I've changed different sports, different activities, different things I'm interested in. I've done, gone from triathlon to weightlifting to rock climbing to CrossFit to, and there'll probably be other things. I've done running, there's other things, and you just bring in all of those parts into your life and you enjoy them at the time. In terms of, managing weight, ultimately, it's going to be down to calories and energy balance and understanding, what is being used for what. And our metabolism doesn't necessarily change as we go into menopause at all. It sort of changes around 60 ish and not dramatically. And so looking at, okay, why isn't it working quite for me like it is probably more nuanced than, oh, I'm a woman and I'm going into these hormonal changes and therefore the X doesn't work for me anymore. It's unfortunately not as straightforward. If you look around at men going into their 40s, 50s, the rugby playing that they did in their 20s probably doesn't work for them either. But that's not because rugby playing doesn't work for them anymore. It's that they are now 40 or 50 years old and maybe they can't run as fast, or they don't have time to go to the training sessions as much as they did. Maybe they've just, there's lots of reasons. And if you love going to your spin class in the morning, then go to your spin class in the morning. And, adding muscle becomes more difficult as we become anabolically resistant as we age. Definitely. We have to work harder to hold on to the muscle that we have or that we want to build. That's absolutely the case. And so if you've only got 3 hours a week to spend training, are you best spending all of that running? Arguably not. Arguably, if you could do one run, 2 strength sessions a week, you are going to hold on to muscle, and therefore muscle is metabolically more active, and so you will burn more calories. It's not like as impressive as we like to think, but it does help. So I guess the point is that, as much as she's well-meaning, I don't think we can follow exactly the advice. And if people have got like the studies and they're like, oh, actually, no, this study definitely showed this, please, I'll be super interested to see it. I'm always here for, and it may be like in 30 years' time, we're sitting here going, oh my God, Stacey Sims was definitely onto something and we just didn't have the research. But quite at the moment, we don't have the research. We have the research in rats. We don't have the research in humans that they're talking about. So that was sorry to I've just totally pissed on your fireworks a little bit there. I know a lot of people I did the same. Like I did the same thing. I listened to it and was like, oh my God, this is completely going to change everything. And the point is that like looking at even weight loss. So, you know, I am not alone in weight loss becomes more difficult to sustain. Like you have to be on it even more than you were in your 20s and 30s. Like I know so many people who could just like, oh, I just stopped eating chocolate and it just fell off. And it's like, well, yeah, but everything is different now. So you are going to have to do work a little bit harder. Your appetite doesn't need to be, you're not using as much. You only have to look at my 19-year-old son and see how much he puts away and know that his body is working overtime to burn through all those calories. Ours is just not doing that as a sort of, 30s plus woman even. And we we are in a different stage of our lives, and what we need to do is more nuanced, but it isn't as straightforward as do X. I think it's more looking at the thing is, I don't want to confuse you more because actually I think that's one of the things that Stacey Sims has done really badly actually is to bring around more confusion that we're kind of like, oh my God, so now I can't go for my lovely runs that I like with my friends. Actually, no, don't worry about that. I think worry less. I think worry less about getting it right and do the things that you enjoy and that you will continue to do on a for the next 30 years. Bring in some strength training 100% because it is 100% shown that in order to hold on to or build muscle, you're going to need to do some strength training, resistance training. But over and above that, have a think about what you're doing. I do have other things to cover in this actually, but I feel like I've been wittering on for quite a long time. I'll keep going. So I wanted to talk about even about weight loss as we age, and that was the other, should we do it fast? Should we do it slow? Um, Honestly, it doesn't matter. I think is the point, and that um, one of the things that I hold my hands up to as being a bias that I used to hold, which was, slow, steady weight loss is the way to go. It isn't always, actually. And sometimes just losing the weight is the best way to go. You are going to lose some muscle as you lose weight, regardless of how you do it. Doing resistance training whilst losing weight is the best way to hold on to any muscle that you have. And obviously, if you are on a super, super low calorie diet, you're probably not going to have the energy to weight train. It's really, really hard. So finding a sweet spot where you can do everything that you need to do and you're in a calorie deficit is the way to go. And finding that is tricky. It is tricky. It's also worth bearing in mind that, the moving more, just generally moving, is one of the best things that you can do. Because I think part of what, we get more tired as we go into menopause, even, you're tired. So you won't go for that walk that you said you were going to go on, or you are going to park a little bit closer to the supermarket because you're just knackered and you didn't sleep well last night. And it's, all of those things kind of add up together. So I guess I probably want to just say that whilst it is nuanced and what we need is individual, because ultimately we are only responsible for ourselves and what we do, we probably don't need to worry about things as much in terms of, I'm using my inverted commas, getting it right. Getting it right, it doesn't really, I don't know, does it exist? I just find that the people I coach, It's slightly different for everybody, that some people want to go for a run and some people definitely never want to go for a run. Some people love zone 2, some people hate zone 2 and would rather go and hike for 10 miles. And some people, I should clarify what I mean by zone 2. So zone 2 is like, so if you have 4 zones of training, and zone 1 is kind of, you know, meandering along. Zone 2 is that bit where you can talk, but it's more difficult to talk. Zone 3, you struggle to hold a conversation. Zone 4, you are hanging on to your, you know, hanging on to your ass basically to get yourself through. So zone 2 is that kind of, yeah, I could hold a conversation, but I'm a little bit out of breath. And there is a lot of benefit in terms of aerobic capacity in doing zone 2 work. So is it the answer to losing weight? No, because being fit and losing weight are two completely different things. Two different things. You almost have to completely separate them in your mind. So if you are running to lose weight, stop, because you're wasting your time if you're not in a calorie deficit. And often I find that the more zone 2 I do, the hungrier I become. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because sometimes I'm training for a different thing. So it's a performance goal. And I think that's also lost on some people, is that actually I think, you know, performance is as interesting and as rewarding as staying at a stable weight. Now, from a health perspective, obviously, a healthy weight is going to be, beneficial, but so is being healthy, in fit and active. So, a few things for you to think about. I'm not sure whether I've actually hopefully cleared up a few things. I think the point is to question everything, to take no, this podcast included, take no podcast as the law. And if you have the research that she pointed to and it's not in animals and it's in humans, I would be really interested to see it, because I just couldn't find it. And so, yeah. And the other things, if you have other questions, please let me know and I would be happy to whittle on to you about them. Thank you for listening.